While Marvel rushed to spoil the whole world by officially renaming its Thunderbolts movie to New Avengers, the next and final step of the Multiverse saga is fast approaching. But let's be clear, I'm going to keep calling it Thunderbolt. This movie wraps up Phase 5 with a real team movie at last. We can even call it an Avengers movie. But are we really ready to welcome Doom and his multiversal apocalypse when we all kind of feel like nothing has really been set up for this movie? What is the real goal of the Multiverse saga? And in the end, could it have actually been a mistake in the history of the MCU? For many, this saga feels like a set of confusing, disconnected projects that go nowhere. But as for me, I think that with some hindsight, Phases 4 and 5 aren't that bad, and they've given us everything we need to see Doom shine in a multiversal war. But above all, we must not forget that absolutely nothing went as planned, and that whatever happens, we'll have to make do with what we have. But don't worry, the Avengers movies have become the studio's #1 priority. That's why in this video, we're going to go back through all the past, present, and future projects to solve this mystery. So we're entering the spoiler zone, the zone of all dangers. You're with Kevin Buckhart, your favorite theorist from your favorite Super Wii show. Yes, the spoiler room is #1. And that feels good. Thanks everyone. Roll the credits. Was it better before? Since 2008 and the launch of the MCU with Iron Man, Marvel has structured its universe into phases that themselves form sagas. A format created to build an extended universe where all movies share a common storyline about major threats faced by the Avengers. Don't worry, I won't re-explain the entire MCU structure, you already know it. But as we already mentioned in a previous video, each phase had its own theme and purpose. All of it followed a common direction that gave the whole thing coherence. For example, the Infinity Saga is a saga about family. In Phase 1, we're introduced to solitary, marginalized, misunderstood heroes who come together, despite their differences, to face a threat bigger than themselves, Loki and his Chitauri army. The goal is clear, to establish the concept of the Avengers and start introducing the threat of Thanos, even if he remains very discreet, since Loki is the real face of this threat. In reality, Thanos won't become central until much later. His army is defeated and he disappears into the shadows. Phase 2, we question what it really means to be a hero. Tony realizes that he is a hero. With or without his armor, Steve challenges military authority to stay true to his principles. And Thor refuses the throne to protect the 9 realms. It's a phase of taking responsibility, and overall, the Infinity Saga is mainly the story of this trinity. Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor, with other characters revolving around them, of course, but it's also in this phase that Ultron is created. A threat born from the Avengers themselves that will change everything, since it's from this movie that the very secret parliament within Marvel's leadership is created. A group of creatives led by Kevin Feige, who meet once a year to discuss the main directions of the MCU and how to make sure everything connects toward the same goal. This is how the Infinity Stones, the true stars of this saga, are gradually introduced. Above all, it's about the gems, not Thanos, as the name suggests. Remember this, it's important for what's next. Phase 3 is about sacrifice and fractures. The consequences of Phase 2 explode, Civil War is about family, and the entire Phase 3 is built on complex family relationships. Guardians of the Galaxy Vol. 2 Black Panther, Thor, Ragnarok, and even Infinity War, where it's Thanos dealing with his family issues. We barely hear about him until Ragnarok's post-credits scene setting up Infinity War. When he appears, it's explosive because everything was prepared in advance. Each movie builds the universe. Doctor Strange is shown as a responsible guardian, and his choice to surrender the Time Stone is highly significant. Thor and Hulk's development highlights Thanos' strength, even without showing their defeats in detail. Odin's death speeds up the Mad Titan's arrival. Tony's obsession with protecting Earth since 2012 leads to his inevitable failure. The more you try to avoid something, the more likely you are to cause it. In short, we didn't need to see Thanos 15 times to feel his impact. And Infinity War plus Endgame were a hit because everything had been carefully built up, and that's exactly what I want to tell you. We don't need to have seen Doom for Avengers Doomsday to make sense, since everything has been present since the start of the Multiverse saga. The real question now is how can this saga still make it? Kevin Feige to the rescue. It's true, a lot of fans consider the Multiverse saga a failure, and I've said it myself before. Let's be honest, the past few years haven't been great for Marvel. But we also need to put things in context. First, I think that Phases 4 and 5 are on the same level as Phases 1 and 2. Yes, there are a few good movies and quite a lot of very average projects. I'm deliberately putting Phase 3 aside because it delivered hit after hit. But if we objectively look at the beginnings of the MCU, the Incredible Hulk, Thor, The Dark World, and even Ant-Man were commercial failures that struggled to be profitable. Many claiming the MCU died after Endgame weren't even old enough to see the earlier phases in theaters, yet criticisms were similar back then. It's too light, too interconnected, too smooth. The truth is, it was Phase 3 that really saved Marvel. And truly, it was Infinity War and Endgame that propelled the studio to legendary status. But we have to call things as they are. The last 5 years have been a real disaster for the MCU, and absolutely nothing has gone as planned. Marvel, following the massive success of Infinity War and Endgame, will acquire Fox and its character rights as Kevin Feige plans for the future. The Multiverse Saga was supposed to run from 2020 to 2025, with a Secret Wars movie as the grand finale at the end of 2024. This could have allowed for a smooth transition into 10 years of X-Men. T'Challa, Spidey, and Captain Marvel would become the new faces of this saga. However, the pandemic changed everything, but that's not all. The cataclysmic change in direction forced Marvel to focus on quantity over quality, along with the unlikely twists of fate that are going to turn everything upside down. First, the tragic death of Chadwick Boseman. But also Sony's whims that prevented Marvel from using Spidey, not to mention the online backlash against Brie Larson and the conviction of Jonathan Majors, who was supposed to be the main villain of the saga. Add to that the writers' strike, the special effects scandal, the internal conflicts, and the ideological bias that led Disney to hire by prioritizing diversity over skills. With all that, you probably have the most explosive mix ever put together. In short, a real nightmare. It all starts with Bob Iger, the legendary president of Disney, who retires in 2020. He is replaced by Bob Chapek, former boss of the theme parks, and what he wants is to launch Disney Plus at full speed with as much content as possible, quickly and everywhere. Meanwhile, Kevin Feige just finished Endgame. He's on top, but taking up too much space. A recent Wall Street Journal article shows he wasn't eager to get involved with Disney Plus, but stayed quiet to avoid conflict. As a result, he's gradually pushed out of creative decisions. Worse, the man who used to be behind every decision becomes impossible to find. And all the creatives working on the movies and series can't get a hold of him anymore. To give you an idea, it seems that Kevin Feige only received a single note during the entire production of She-Hulk. The one where he finds out that a robot with a cap is named after him. Anyway, it's no wonder the writers of the series didn't understand the character at all.
That's the story Kevin wants. No. Then I want to talk to Kevin. No one talks to the characters.
And it's Karim Daniel, a close associate of Chapek, who is appointed as the head of a new division in 2020 Disney Media Entertainment Distribution. A division that takes charge of the entire creative strategy and causes all the creative directors of the franchises to lose their power. Everything is centralized with a business-first mindset, and we've seen the result. It's a disaster. Dozens of projects announced just for the name of Disney plus total disorganization at Marvel, and a mass rejection of directors, screenwriters, and even actors who no longer want to work with the studio. That's why, at the end of 2022, Bob Iger was urgently called back. Chapek is out, and the first decision is to dismantle the entire structure of Karim Daniel. But the damage is done. At Star Wars, there are 800 projects in progress that nobody wants. And at Marvel, it's total panic. But then there's a turnaround. 5 months after returning, Bob Iger used the writer's strike to restart the creative machine. During the famous Parliament retreat, the creatives behind the MCU continuity, Iger slammed his fist on the table. Everything needs to change. Quality must be prioritized over quantity. But above all, this saga must be saved by focusing absolutely all efforts on the Avengers movies. Yes, there is Marvel fatigue, and yes, it's Marvel's fault. As a result, there's a major cleanup. Tons of projects are being cancelled. And from now on, it will be 1 to 2 live-action series per year and a maximum of 2 to 3 movies. And that's it. Kevin Feige is finally taking back full control and is determined to save Marvel. It's in this context that the Russo brothers are convinced to return. With them, they have Robert Downey Jr., the actor who, in Feige's mind, was supposed for years to play Doom against Kang and who was supposed to be one of the main characters in the Mutant Saga. The crucial part is the Russo brothers' return. They fully master the lore and know how to tie everything together. Because in the MCU, even if it seems so, nothing is fully planned 10 years ahead. Each movie just leaves details for future films to use. The best proof is that the leader's story started in The Incredible Hulk 17 years ago and comes back in the latest Captain America. Well, it was bad, but still. And the Russo brothers are experts at this. Half my short theory videos still cover Infinity War and Endgame because those films are packed with clues you can keep rediscovering. That's why they're the best to set up the end of the saga and maybe fix everything. Because as they say themselves in interviews, Marvel has lost what made it strong, a shared story, and they weren't hired to answer every single unresolved plot thread. but to sort things out and draw a clear guiding line that will connect the MCU together. In short, we're in a rescue operation through quality. And that's also why no films other than the Avengers have been announced. Nothing is more important than making these movies a success to win back the audience. I know many of you are concerned that filming for the movie is only starting a year before. Earlier, I told you that Infinity War was prepared as early as Age of Ultron, which was in 2013 or 2014. All the writers, storyboard, and special effects artists began working over 4 years ago. As I mentioned, Secret Wars was scheduled for late 2024. And so, Feige started working on it since 2019. So don't worry guys, everything is in good hands. That's why I suggest we take a look at everything that's been set up for Doomsday and Secret Wars. And you might be surprised, the hero teams. Many people said that these Thunderbolts, now known as the New Avengers, came out of nowhere and that nobody cared about them. Yet, we actually saw them develop throughout the projects of Phases 4 and 5 first, Red Guardian and Yelena, introduced in Black Widow, the very first film of Phase 4. Valentina appears in the post-credit scene, sending Yelena into the Hawkeye series, where audiences became attached to her. Valentina, who reappears in Falcon and the Winter Soldier to recruit John Walker, later becomes CIA director in Wakanda Forever. All these projects lead to the Thunderbolts movie and the New Avengers. A team of anti-heroes who, as we know, will play a central role, especially with Sentry, who, according to his actor, is currently in hibernation and will inevitably have to wake up. A team set to welcome the Fantastic Four into the old Avengers headquarters. It's been revamped into an insanely high-tech version. This new Avengers Tower could very well become one of the central locations where all these teams will gather. Especially since we learn in the post-credit scene that Sam Wilson has also formed his own Avengers team, and actually, that creates a conflict with Bucky. All of this starts in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, where Sam doubts himself and doesn't feel up to the task. That doubt follows him all the way to his own movie before he finally decides to trust his instincts and form a new team. But with whom? On the veteran side, Clint seems out of the game after the Hawkeye series. Especially since he's absent from Season 2, Thor meanwhile has recovered from depression, is fit, and is now with his adopted daughter, Love, aka Eternity. That's impressive. T'Challa is officially deceased in the MCU, but 2 new Black Panthers have emerged, Shuri and M'Baku, the new kings of Wakanda. Let's not forget T'Challa's son, who is still very young and might one day take up the mantle. Scott, meanwhile, is a real star. And after his adventure with Kang, the multiversal conqueror, he could very well be useful to the team. Peter, on the other hand, is no longer an Avenger. He has become a total stranger, unknown to his former teammates, so there's little chance of seeing him on the team. As for Hulk, Banner seems to be in full control of his transformations. Maybe he can even unleash the real Hulk now if needed, since he's able to choose between his Smart Hulk form and his human form. He could bring back his cousin Jennifer Walters, also known as She-Hulk, and even his son Scar, who came straight from Sakaar. And let's not forget the post-credits scene from Shang-Chi. Wong, the self-proclaimed leader of the remaining Avengers, makes Shang-Chi a new Avenger. He is accompanied by Bruce and Carol Danvers, and that famous signal is sent by Shang-Chi's rings. Just like Kamala's bracelets will probably play a crucial role. Carol is indeed back on Earth, and she's the one behind the famous space crisis, but we'll talk about that later. Wong is training America Chavez at Kamatage, who can travel the multiverse, the Guardians of the Galaxy Vol. 3 certainly marks the end of the original team, but introduces us to a new generation led by Rocket, with Adam Warlock and Phil Lavelle, who will probably be very important for the lead-up to Secret Wars. And Star-Lord is now back on Earth. In short, Sam has plenty of options to form his team, and most of the characters we've mentioned are already confirmed for Doomsday or will be soon. But that's not all. Most Phase 4 and 5 projects have introduced the young Avengers, who may be renamed the Champions since they're no longer very young. Among them are Wiccan and Speed, Wanda's twins, seen in WandaVision, who we'll see again in Agatha All Along, and probably Vision Quest, Patriot, seen in The Winter Soldier, America. Chavez in Multiverse of Madness, Cassie Lang in Quantumania, and of course, Kamala, who starts to assemble the team by recruiting Kate Bishop at the end of the Marvels. And nothing stops us from adding Scar, Ironheart, or even Kid Loki. We'll see. And of course, let's not forget the Fantastic Four, who we'll talk about again very soon. And finally, we also have the Exiles from Deadpool and Wolverine, which will probably be a TVA team made up of heroes from across the multiverse and the original X-Men from the universe where Monica Rambeau landed at the end of the Marvels. And here, we realize something. The past 5 years have set many pieces on the chessboard, and nearly everyone is here now. Everyone has found their place for the conclusion. This allows us to start the next arc of this great saga. But before moving on, I have to thank you. Thank you for your strength, your subscriptions, and your support. Thank you so much. Lately, we've set new records for views, engagement, and comments. Strangely, new subscriber numbers are dropping. If you enjoy the videos and haven't joined yet, please subscribe. It costs nothing and it helps the channel a lot. Alright, let's get back to it. The multiverse. And its end. It all starts with time travel in Endgame, which lets Loki escape. That's when a new world opens up to us and we learn something crucial. The multiverse doesn't exist. At least not yet. There's only one universe, the 616, and its branches, which are also called the Eternal Time Stream, monitored by an organization, the TVA. This famous time variance authority in French, secretly led by a variant of Kang the Conqueror, He Who Remains. A variant who repeatedly experienced the multiverse's destruction until realizing he'd always return to the heart of this unique stream. So, he planned everything from A to Z to secure the TVA, but Loki is going to break this loop, freeing the multiverse and becoming its new guardian. The god of stories, a being outside of time and outside of the multiverse, capable of almost divine powers within the Hydra Sill. Since then, the TVA has changed its mission. Before it erased all universe branches that could create a new reality, today they simply monitor them from afar, letting them expand. We also find out that he is discreetly recruiting exceptional beings for a major event that is coming soon in the 616. That's actually why Deadpool is being recruited. His universe is fading away and he has a major role to play in future events. It could even be that Wanda, who we think disappeared under the rubble of Mount Wundagore, was actually captured by the TVA. The destruction of the Darkhold throughout the multiverse has probably triggered many incursions. Another important detail is that the TVA is closely connected to the Void. This dimension outside of time and space is where worlds and variants erased during a Nexus event are sent. And this void could very well become the welcoming land of Battleworld, the place created at the end of Doomsday and which will be the stage for Secret Wars. A TVA that is very likely to be Doom's objective in the final battle of Doomsday, where he will seek a forbidden power to try to save the multiverse, provided he becomes its supreme god. So the TVA is our gateway to the multiverse. And we're going to explore this multiverse in several projects, often from the perspective of the 616, which means we're almost as lost as the heroes themselves. In Spider-Man, No Way Home, Doctor Strange, because of a botched spell, creates an interdimensional rift. As a result, variants of Spidey show up with their enemies. Each comes from a different universe and time period. Yes, we have the Green Goblin, Dr. Octopus, and Electro, who are pulled in just before their deaths that happened several years apart. Which makes us realize something. Crossing the multiverse is also, in a way, traveling through time. Well, more or less, since my time period probably isn't the same as that of the universe I arrive in. Which explains why the Fantastic Four can come straight from the 1960s without having aged a bit. It's actually Einstein's principle of relativity, but applied to the multiverse. In short, we discover that the multiverse is more or less drawn from the eternal flow of time, the original universe. That's why so many universes look alike, and why we find variants of almost every hero. Among these worlds, there's the famous Earth 838. A peaceful, futuristic universe governed by the Illuminati, the leaders of the most powerful teams, until they get massacred by a Wanda possessed by the one from our universe. And let me remind you that a seat on this council was left empty. Many people think it was reserved for Victor Von Doom. And if we follow this lead, we can imagine that Strange's passage through this universe, as well as Wanda's dreamwalking, triggered an irreversible incursion. And if Doom came from this universe, he would now hold 616 responsible, obviously, for the massacre of the council members, but also for the fall of 838. Because yes, the multiverse is dying, and we learn that in several projects. First by He Who Remains, then by his younger variant, Kang the Conqueror, who both explain to us that the actions of these other versions create uncontrollable incursions and that only he can contain them. Then by Reed Richards of Universe 838, who explains to us how these incursions work, and especially that the Doctor Stranges are the greatest dangers to the multiverse.
From our experience, the greatest danger to the multiverse is Doctor Strange.
We also learn that Strange and Klee left Universe 616 to go fix an incursion that he himself caused. Not to mention a brand new concept introduced in Deadpool and Wolverine, the Anchor Beings. The death of just one of these beings dooms the entire universe they belong to. What we need to remember from all this is that no matter what we do, the multiverse is destined to disappear. Too unstable, too fragmented, subject to too many destructive variables, and yet we've discovered several ways to travel through it. First, TVA technology lets you travel to any universe and date you choose. Next, Kang's tech based on the quantum realm. Then there's the one from the Council of Kangs or Reed from 838 who uses interdimensional portals, technologies that more or less all have the same origin, but also magic, with Strange's spell, dreamwalking through the Darkhold, or Klee's magic that comes from the Dark Dimension. America Chavez's natural power is opening portals across the multiverse. And finally, the quantum bracelets, which in the Marvels created an incursion between 616 and probably the X-Men universe, as we see at the end of Days of Future Past, a universe where Monica Rambeau is now trapped. So, no, we won't get to Doomsday without any foundation on the multiverse. On the contrary, everything has been set up, but what do we do with everything else then? The surplus of the saga. We discussed this earlier. The Russo brothers didn't intend to resolve every storyline, so many red herrings may stay unresolved. A key theme in this saga is its political aspect. Kingpin returns as New York's mayor, transforming the city into an anti-hero zone. By the way, it's a bit ironic when you know that the Avengers Tower is right in the heart of Manhattan. We hope Season 2 of Born Again reveals more. Meanwhile, global political instability continues. The events of Secret Wars, if they're still considered canon, have deeply destabilized the world order. New Asgard appears isolated, Wakanda and Talokan are now declared US enemies, and the United States is in crisis. The newly elected president turned out to be a Red Hulk. He is now locked up in the raft. It's the same situation on the fantastic side. A celestial appeared in the sky, waiting to judge whether Earth deserves to survive or not. Another one lies in the ocean, creating tensions around the exploitation of a new metal, adamantium. Major details that, however, will probably never be mentioned again, at least not in this saga. We learned in She-Hulk and Ms. Marvel that mutations exist and many superpowered people already live on Earth, but that's likely to be set aside. Not to mention the cosmic entities, gods, and afterlife realms from Love and Thunder and Moon Knight, which we likely won't see again soon. And most of the series coming in 2025 are just remnants of decisions made under Chapek. They might provide a bit of context for Secret Wars, but not much more. The Russo brothers will focus on the teams, other universes, and the gradual disappearance of the multiverse. And what about Doom in all this? I told you from the beginning, the first two phases were meant to prepare the heroes to unite and to tell the story of the Infinity Stones. Phase 3, on the other hand, is much denser. Every movie matters for the conclusion. Civil War isn't the Avengers. Doctor Strange introduces the Time Stone. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 strengthens the team's family bonds, while also mentioning those challenged by Thanos. Ragnarok leads directly to Infinity War, and Captain Marvel, like Ant-Man and the Wasp, introduces two essential characters for Endgame. Well, here, it's probably the same logic. Yes, we haven't seen Doom yet, but the real threat isn't him. It's the death of the multiverse. Doom will be an anti-hero, an antagonist, and he's going to appear out of nowhere to try to prevent this ending. And that's exactly what's needed to create a surprise effect. The kind of surprise that would feel like Tony Stark's return, but isn't actually one. The first film of Phase 6 is the Fantastic Four. This movie should really focus on the multiverse to explain it to us one last time clearly, because that's what we need right now. A clarification about the threat. And there's no doubt that the post-credits scene of this movie will lead directly to Doomsday, just like the one in Ragnarok led into Infinity War. That's also exactly the role of the post-credits scene in Thunderbolts. In fact, it was directed by the Russo brothers right on the set of Doomsday, so it's a real scene from the movie. Probably the one where we first see the new Avengers, especially for those who missed the Thunderbolts movie. And thanks to everything that was set up before, the incident in space mentioned in the post-credits scene is probably caused by Captain Marvel, Ms. Marvel, or America Chavez. And at that moment, it will all make sense. Same goes for the Fantastic Four arriving on a multiversal ship. So yes, the multiverse saga has been chaotic, sometimes messy, sometimes hard to follow. It felt like it was going nowhere. But we shouldn't forget that originally everything was planned to lead to Secret Wars, and in the end, with the refocus by the Russo brothers and Kevin Feige to make Avengers movies, the biggest films ever made, it gave us enough groundwork to launch Phase 6 on solid footing. And no, there's no need to make a big deal about Doom before Doomsday because he will be absolutely omnipresent in at least two of the most important films in the entire MCU. Tell me in the comments if I convinced you. And we'll see each other next Friday at 3 p.m. for a new video. In the meantime, don't forget to stay curious. That's the secret to being happy. Ciao.